Well. Look at what we have here. I hit the live button. I hit the live button once again. Y'all believe that shit? Look at there. I'm gonna wait for a few people to get up in here. I had to just pop up again at the last minute. I'm trying to figure out how to schedule this thing out through YouTube. I might end up having to do me some StreamYard to get this right. StreamYard's another program you can use in order to do that, but we'll see if anybody pops on here in the next few minutes or so. Today, we got a few topics we're going to discuss. A Outlaw Posse member of mine actually suggested this topic, Mr. Heath Stokes. He wanted to compare Patti Gasso, the Oklahoma softball coach, to Nick Saban's dynasty. Sort of see which one's better. Which one's better, Patti Gasso or Nick Saban dynasty? Who knows? Also, the Big 12 got a huge deal. Supposedly, they made more than they've ever made before, $440 million, which is $44 million a team. And while that is great money, it says in this article from Sports Illustrated that Yormack said $44 million was what was promised by the previous conference commissioner. What was his name? I can't remember that guy's name now, but anyway, it's $440 million for the conference as a whole, which is a new record. But that still pales in comparison to the SEC. That's the only problem. And the problem with the Big 12 and a lot of these other conferences outside the Big 10 is they try to target the SEC. Caleb Witten, both OU softball and OU football will have 7 natties when OU wins the softball championship. By the way, if y'all don't mind, if you look down here, you can click out of the live chat temporarily and go out and hit the like button for me. You hit that like button, it notifies everybody that we're in here, gets more people in here, and it gets that algorithm up and going. Also, there's a little $ down here. You can click on that. It'll push your comments to the top. That way I can read them out more readily and quicker. If you want your comment or your question pushed to the top, just hit that $ down there at the bottom. Type what you want to ask me, and then hit send. Make sure you type that out first, though, because lots of people, they'll just hit send, and sometimes they'll forget to put their message in there the proper way, and they don't get their question asked, and all they get is a blank, and they end up spending that money for nothing. So Heath Stokes, one of our Outlaw Posse members, as I said before, by the way, you can join the Outlaw Posse for $2.99 a month. That's 75 cents a week. And that's probably going to be one of the benefits of being in the Outlaw Posse is that you're able to, maybe suggest some topics for me and that kind of deal. But also on here we got Pac-12 odds for winning the Pac-12. KT Jefferson, quarterback at Arkansas, had a few things to say in the 8-game SEC schedule. What do you guys and gals think about the 8-game SEC schedule? I know a lot of people have been really pissed off about that. A lot of the other conferences are pissed off because they say that, hey, if the SEC is going to go to 16 teams, then they should have to play 9 conference games. And so I can be a little bit of devil's advocate here because most people are giving the SEC hell, and most notably Nick Saban and the 3 other universities that decided that they didn't want to go with an 8-game schedule. But my argument for an 8-game schedule is the fact that, maybe it would free up the SEC to schedule more tougher non-conference games as opposed to continuing to schedule the 2 cupcakes a year. Because as you know, most of the teams in the SEC will have 1 tough non-conference game, and then they will have like 2 cupcakes usually. Another argument I really get tired of, I've said this ad nauseum, is it comes mostly from the Big 10 people out there. They say that, the SEC schedules their cupcakes late to get some kind of advantage over the rest of college football. It might be true, But the thing is, why are you not doing that? That's the thing. It's actually a smart thing the SEC does by scheduling the cupcake before their chief rival game every year is what they usually do, and scheduling that game that late allows your team to get a little extra rest for the starters going into the conference championship games and the playoff games, and it allows for those players that don't normally get to play third, fourth, scout team. It allows them to get on the field and get valuable reps when you play those cupcake games. Also, the teams that are the cupcakes, the players on those teams, it's like a lifetime experience for them. Those guys, those athletes, they bust their ass every day. They're just not as talented, but they get to play in a big venue like Bryant-Denny Stadium or the Big House in Michigan or Touchdown Jesus or the Swamp or any number of famous stadiums out there that they normally would not get to play in. Like I said, if you want to get your comment pushed to the top, if you want to throw a comment in the comment section, you just hit that little $ down there and say something and then send it, and it'll push it to the top where I can respond to any questions that you guys and gals may have out there about college football. Now, the debate that I want to get into, like I said, is Nick Saban's dynasty versus Patti Gasso's dynasty. I think Patti Gasso has been the softball coach at Oklahoma for 20-something years. I think she's won 6 national championships. I got a little list of here of what each and every one of them make. It's hard to compare Saban and Gasso because it's 2 different sports, but if you're going to make me, I guess Gasso is better simply because Nick has never won 50 in a row. Yeah, I mean, that's a valid point to a degree, Kenneth, but the thing is Nick Saban's not allowed to play 40 and 50 games a year. You see, softball is not like football. And softball, you do get injuries. But in football, we all know, we may not admit it, especially the Title IX people out there that want to kiss the females' asses and that kind of deal. I have a problem with females being on equal footing and having their sports, but let's call it spade a spade. There's more injuries in football. Football makes more money, that kind of deal. There's probably more parity in football, even though it seems like that Alabama and Georgia and the SEC have been somewhat dominating college football. To me, sometimes female sports like college softball and basketball, there's like a big drop-off. Once you get outside the top 10, 15, 20 teams, there's a huge drop-off, and you get these astronomically horrendous blowout games. Even within your conference, sometimes you'll have Connecticut beat up on somebody like a Seton Hall or somebody. They'll beat them like 120 to 37 or some shit. So women's sports come a long way, but they still got a little ways to go before they can compete with men on a regular basis, and that may never happen, but no fault of their own. But and then, of course, you got the transgenders now invading women's sports. So we may not have women's sports much longer. It may be transgender sports and men's sports. I can watch this on my phone, but not on my PS5. Weird. Yeah, Eric, that is weird. As you can see, Eric has the badge. He has the blue badge, and so does J.D. Wilmoth. Here they come, riding on in. Some Outlaw Posse members up in here. Y'all got my back today, I hope. You want one of those badges like Eric and JD? Like I said, you can join the Outlaw Posse for $2.99 a month. That's only 75 cents a week. And we can get you some perks and bonuses and whatnot. Get you a little badge like that. And I think once you've been a member a certain amount of time, that the badges go to a certain color, that kind of deal. But I'll think of something to give the Outlaw Posse members for their support. Maybe y'all got some suggestions for me. What do you think? In here in the stats, I got here Patti Gasso versus Nick Saban dynasty. Patti Gasso makes $1.65 million a year. No surprise, because softball, while it's a spectator sport, it's not the kind of spectator sport that football is. Nick Saban makes $11 million a year with perks and bonuses from the last time I heard that. But it may be more than that by now. 48 straight wins. Is that what y'all got? The Oklahoma Center softball team's won 48 or 49 straight, which is a new NCAA record for that sport. A long way from the Connecticut women. And the Connecticut women win like 100 games in a row before they finally lost. Now, that would be something right there. Nick Saban has won 7 national championships, so he's got Patti Gasso in that regard. She's got 6. Nick Saban's won 6 at Alabama and 7 overall. He won 1 at LSU. We were just joking about the 50-game streak. I actually feel the same. It's not really possible to compare the two. They're both the GOAT in their own sport in their own right. 50, says Kenneth. So 50 in a row now for the Oklahoma Sooners. Like I said, if you want to get your comment pushed to the top, if you want to donate to the program right now, there's a little dollar sign down there on the right side, a little money dollar sign. Click on that, type out your comment, shoot it to me, and it'll push it to the top, and I can read it out more readily. And it helps the algorithm, all that good stuff. Like I said, pop out of the live chat if you can, hit the like button, and then jump back in here and holler at me, and we'll get this thing continuing on here. Alabama landed a number 1 running back recruit the other day in Anthony Rogers for 2025. It's their 4th blue chip. So it seems like all the negative recruiting against Nick Saban is not working out for people, because while Georgia is now probably the King Dingaling, winning national championships and being number 1 in recruiting, Alabama and Nick Saban are still in the top 3, top 5 every year in recruiting. Until that stops, I don't think Nick Saban's ever going to retire. Maybe he is a Highlander. You know, I don't know. You guys and gals tell me, when do y'all think Nick Saban may finally hang it up? You think this might be his last year? Some people have been saying it might. And I know he's got a contract that has him here to what is it, 2028, 2029? But I think that was just window dressing to keep the negative recruiting off of Nick Saban because of his age. But you guys and gals tell me what y'all think. Y'all think he's going to be here 1 more year, 2 more years, 3 more years? I think he's going to be here at least 2 or 3 more years. I think that's what's going to happen with Nick Saban. I think he'll probably retire probably in 2025 or 2026. Dark horse Heismans. No got any dark horse Heismans for me? That's another topic people have been wanting me to talk about. But back to Patti Gasso and Nick Saban. Now, Saban does have like a 20-game winning streak in college football. When you compare the two, that's sort of like what Patti Gasso's done. Because, you know, in softball, you play 40, 50, 60 games a year, right? Whereas in football, you don't play near as many. You get more injuries. There's more players on the field. And to me, it's just a harder sport to succeed in. That may be me being biased. I don't know. You tell me. But moving on, if I had to guess, if you had to corner me on it, I'm not being biased here, but until Patti Gasso does get that 7th national championship to match Nick Saban, you have to give him the edge right now. But what she's done is very, very impressive as well. Plus, she hasn't left and coached a bunch of other teams that I'm aware of. Nick Saban has actually coached like 4 or 5 different teams. So he hasn't done all of his at one school. It's hard to stay at one school that long. Even though he stayed at Alabama quite a long time, I think this is his 16th season. Patti Gasso's got him beat in that regard as well, as far as seniority goes at one school. But anyway, back to the 8-game schedule thing. What do you guys and gals think about that? I know a lot of people are pissed off about it. But I say this too, and it really pisses a lot of people off. But to me, conferences like the Pac-12 and the ACC, for example, and maybe even the Big 12 to some degree. Now, I know Kansas had a good year last year, but Kansas, for the most part, for the last 20 years or so, has been a doormat. The thing with the SEC, while they do have what you might consider doormats in Vanderbilt, those teams towards the bottom of the conference are towards the bottom of the conference because the top of the conference is so damn good. You take a team like Mississippi State, for example, and you put them in the Pac-12 or the ACC, they would be in the top three of that conference. They may not beat Clemson in the ACC, but they would be right there, and they're probably playing Clemson in the ACC title game every other year. This is Gasso's 29th season. I equally respect Gasso and Saban, says Mike Wilkinson. One sick puppy. Patti's first contract at OU was for $42,000. Yeah, well, that's because back in the day, softball wasn't really considered a huge spectator sport. Softball has grown exponentially. Now, as far as softball goes and baseball, they're two sports for some reason that do not have female versions of the other. Yet they're very quite similar. The only difference is softballs are bigger than baseballs, right? So that's where the transgenders might be able to actually compose an argument in that one sport, softball, because it says in a lot of bylaws, a lot of universities, if you do not offer a sport in a certain gender, then they can play for whatever gender you offer it in. And softball is a sport that's only offered to females. A lot of people ain't thought about that. And I hate transgenders, believe me. But if you don't offer a men's softball team, then I guess they have to let men play softball. You ain't even got to declare yourself a transgender. You ain't even got to lie and say, "Oh, I'm not a gay man. I'm the transgender fairy. Come down and zap my penis in the middle of the night, and now it's a vagina, even though it's still out there. It's like a jack in the box. It still pops out when I unzip my zipper." That kind of deal. Baseball don't offer it. And I know when I was a kid, though, I remember girls actually playing Little League baseball with us. So, I don't know, man. The transgender shit really gets me riled up. Everybody knows that. So, if y'all want to really piss me off, let's start talking about that shit. And like I said before, and I'll say it again, you go out and hit that like button, jump out of the chat real quick, hit the like button, come back in here. Helps that algorithm. It pushes me quite a bit. Also, if you want to get your comment to the top, hit that $sign down there on the right. Put your comment in there, then send it, and it will highlight it, and you will be at the top and be highlighted. You'll be the best damn comment on the board, at least until the next donation. I have absolutely no problem with the 8-game conference schedule because of the strength of the conference and the requirement to play at least one Power 5 conference in non-conference. Gasso for a three-peat. That's another thing. You're right, John. That's another thing that she would have on Nick Saban. She would have a three-peat on it. A three-peat is a rarity in a lot of sports. It's happened in a lot of sports. It's never happened in college football. Not a unanimous one anyway. Now, some people go back and point to Army of the 1940s in Minnesota, I think of the late 50s, early 60s, as having three-peats, but those were not unanimous. They were split national championships. You've never had a unanimous three-peat national champion in college football. And that's what Georgia's going for this year. They'll have that feather in their cap over everybody else. The hedge pissers of Georgia will have the first three-peat if they win the national championship this year. That's why we can't allow that shit, y'all. We can't be allowing those hedge pissers to have something over us for eternity. Because even if someone comes along and three-peats after Georgia, they'll always have that first three-peat. But three-peats are hard to come by. And I know UCLA done it quite a few times back in the 60s and the 70s under John Wooden. In the NBA, it's not really a rarity. Shit happens all the time. But in college sports, it's a rarity. And it would be a special one. It would be something that Gasso would have over Nick Saban. You're right. So, one more for Gasso, right? Gasso's vastly becoming the leader and maybe having the best dynasty amongst the two. All right. Let's go back to dark horse Heisman Trophy candidate. I saw an article on CBS about this guy, and I thought to myself, if he hadn't got injured last year, he might have had a Cam Newton-esque type year. And that's KJ Jefferson of Arkansas. I think KJ Jefferson could be an outside dark horse Heisman Trophy candidate. Now, it all depends on how many games he wins. I know it's not supposed to be predicated on that, but we all know that it's not always about the best player on the team. It's about the best player on the best team overall. Usually you've been on a team these days anyway. We're not going back to Paul Hornung in Notre Dame and won a damn Heisman Trophy on a 4-win team. Usually if you win a Heisman Trophy, you have to be on a team that's won, I'd say, at least somewhere between 8 and 9 regular season games in the regular season. I think Tim Tebow was the last Heisman Trophy winner that their team didn't have double-digit wins at the end of the year. I think Florida finished 9-4 the year he won the Heisman Trophy or some shit like that. But who's y'all's outside Heisman Trophy dark horse? And if KJ Jefferson plays good enough to be considered as a dark horse Heisman Trophy candidate, then, Arkansas, the Razorbacks, who nobody's talking about, they had a pretty decent year a few years ago under Sam Pittman. And then last year they sort of digressed a little bit. So now nobody's really talking about them. Coming in last year, Arkansas was the hot team that everybody wanted to pick. This year, a lot of people were picking LSU because they upset Alabama last year. But sometimes that team that's the real hot pick ends up digressing, just like Arkansas did, and just like I think LSU will probably do this year as well. I think the Razorbacks are due. I'd like to see the Razorbacks start winning again because they have a pretty passionate fan base, just like Alabama and Oklahoma and Georgia and Ohio State and all those other teams. I don't really like to give Ohio State too many kudos because I've been getting a lot of bad reports on Ohio State fans here lately. Now, there's northern teams, they're supposed to be so much better than us and pristine and more educated. And we got AAU status. The AAU shit don't mean nothing. I get tired of these elitists getting here and saying, well, they get a lot of money off of that. The donors for the university, they get so much money for that, it just really dwarfs football. But this ain't about that. These conferences are built upon athletics. So if you're building them upon athletics, then why does that AAU shit even matter? And surprise, surprise, all of a sudden Notre Dame gets AAU status here recently. And we all know that they don't put enough money into research to be approved for that. All that is Notre Dame hedging their bets. Just in case they need to join the conference, Notre Dame went out and fixed it up to where they could get AAU approved. All right, White Heatherton, do you think Michigan will make the playoffs again? Michigan has made the playoffs what now? Did they make back-to-back years in the playoffs? I think so. That's a hard one. That's a real hard one, White. Seems like Jim Harbaugh has them trending in the right direction. The only thing that bothers me about possibly Michigan doing that is they won it 2 years in a row, but before that, Ohio State had pretty much dominated them for the last 20 years or so. I think Michigan had only won like 1 or 2 games in the last 20 years against Ohio State. If they can beat Ohio State again, then yeah, they got a real good chance of getting it. But that's Captain Obvious, right? There's a lot of teams that are a lot better this year in the Big Ten. Everybody just talking about Ohio State and Michigan, but I think Penn State is bringing back a lot of returning starters. Wisconsin, not really sure about them. Michigan State, I think they're floundering. I think their coach is probably going to lose his job this year. So it might just be down to the Big Two again. Although, like I said, I see Penn State causing some troubles for everybody this year. Illinois is much improved under Brett Bielema. Iowa, if they could ever get a real offense, Iowa would probably win the national championship. I've never seen a defense that great paired up with such a shitty offense. It's the nepotism between Kirk Ferentz and his son that's holding the Iowa program back. Iowa could be in the playoffs if they would just get a modicum of an offense. Auburn loves Field down if they ever play a troon, a perfect cracker. I really don't understand exactly what you're asking there, perfect cracker. Maybe you typoed that. If they ever play a troon. I don't know. Maybe that's one of them new words out there that some of the Generation Z came up with, and I'm not real privy to or educated upon. Maybe you can educate the rest of us on what the word troon means. I know what Tron means. I watched that movie back in the 1980s. I know that's not what it means. But hell, that's the closest thing as I can think to it. But yeah. Also, I've heard that Oklahoma has got one of the top transfer portal classes as well. And you know, I'm not a big fan of the transfer portal, but the thing is, if you're going to go out and sign those transfer portal players, make sure those players that you're signing are the top tier, like 4 and 5 star athletes, maybe. And it looks like maybe Brent has done that. Brent Venables has went out and signed some of the top transfer portal talent in that class to go along with his top 5 and top 10 class the last 2 years. And people ask me all the time, well, how can you be so sure that Oklahoma's going to return? They went 6-7 last year. And like I said ad nauseum, no other coaches had to come in with that kind of turmoil on his desk to start the first year. Because, you know, back in the day, when Nick Saban and Bob Stoops and all them started out, you didn't have this NIL crap to deal with. You didn't have to worry about people luring players into the transfer portal. They say they didn't, but they did. We all know what happened with Linky Boy. We all know what he did with the Skittle Shitters and how they undermined that Oklahoma program and that kind of shit. But that shit's coming back to home. It's going to be home really quick. Now, I know USC went 11-3 last year, and I did predict them to go like 9-3 or 10-3 last year. They won 11, so I was only one game off. The Skittle Shitters getting here and trying to give me hell and say, yeah, you said USC was going to be bad. And 6-6. I never said that USC was going to be 6-6. Never said that. But I think they will digress this year. Everybody automatically assumes that since they got Caleb Williams back, the returning Heisman Trophy candidate, that automatically means they're going to be better. It's not always the case. I've seen it thousands of times. You know, Tebow came back, and he didn't even make it to the national title game. Alabama beat him. Alabama. Old Bryce Young, he won the Heisman Trophy. We didn't even win our division, let alone the SEC. We didn't even win the SEC West Division. So winning the Heisman Trophy does not automatically give USC a ticket to better themselves record-wise. So all you Skittle Shitters out there banking on Mr. I like to paint my fingernail 20,000 cuss words, Caleb Williams, or whatever he's painting on there, it might be some kind of dedication to the transgender volleyball tournaments that they go to all the time out there. Oh, they will regress. They were lucky not to have played Oregon and Washington last season. That's a good. I can't ever say your name, man. I think you just got on the keyboard and started typing shit. I'll try though. Sisyphus JWK. Maybe that's how you say it. But you're right. They did not play Oregon and Washington. That's another thing I was going to get to. They had a pretty easy schedule last year. They had to play Utah twice. And each team that they played that had double-digit wins, they lost to them. Tulane had double-digit wins. Utah had double-digit wins, and they both beat USC. So when USC has to play Oregon and Washington, I'm not privy. I don't have the rest of their schedule in front of me. And then the rest of the teams, yeah. It would not surprise me if USC lost 4 regular season games. They probably won't. They'll probably lose about 3 regular season games and then maybe pick up a loss in the bowl game in a rematch with Tulane in the Cotton Bowl or something because, you know, they are Tulane's bitch after all. As I said in my little short the other day, they're Utah, Tulane, self-made bitch. I see USC probably going about 10-4 next year. That's what I see. And JD Will Moth says, I'm listening to Uncle Lou yesterday, and he's not real happy with the 8-game schedule and the way he explained it. Some of the teams have played the other teams in the Southeastern Conference in years. Well, I don't really like Uncle Lou that much. I think he's a little bitch. Okay? I tried to, partake and participate in his little deal, and he blocked me because I called his team the Hedge Pissers and because he made an off-color comment about the election and Trump's election not being fixed and that kind of stuff. And we was just having a debate, and he blocked me. So you know what I call him now? JD. And you can pass this along to him. If you ever want some, he can come get some. But he's no longer Uncle Lou. Y'all need to call him Auntie Louise because that's his name. Because he's a little bitch. Call me Jimmy. All right, Jimmy. How'd you come up with that screen name, man? What's that all about? I still don't know how to pronounce it. I'll call you Jimmy, like the show Better Call Saul, but I still don't know how to pronounce that shit. Greek mythology. Sis is a fist. Sis is a fist. Sisyphus. Okay. Sisyphus JWK. Sisyphus JWK. And I did get the initials right. I realized that it was probably a name, some kind of name from a game or something that you guys play out there, and then your initials. So at least I got that right. I have to agree with Uncle Lou on the scheduling. Well, a lot of people agree with you and Auntie Louise. But I'm just saying, if I'm playing devil's advocate here, I'm explaining to y'all why an 8-game schedule may be better, because the other conferences out there, like the Pac-12 and the ACC, they have built-in cupcake games. Everybody knows Virginia sucks. Boston College sucks. Syracuse sucks for the most part, most of the time. Out in the Pac-12, yes, Oregon State won 10 games last year, but for the most part, over 100-plus years, Oregon State's a doormat. Arizona sucks. Stanford, for the most part, sucks. We have our first donation coming in from ATL Sooner in the house. Microphone fund, he says. $2. Well, damn, man. If you know where to get a microphone for $2, man, you need to let me know. You need to pony up another $2 and give me the name of the store. And don't say Dollar General. Because that's where USC got their little fight mantra from. Their little catchphrase, their little war cry. That's it. Fight on. Is that not the most generic war cry of all time? Fight on. That sounds like something they seen on the damn shelf on a damn balloon at Dollar General or some shit. Yep. Like I said, if y'all want to get your comment pushed to the top and get me to read it out a lot quicker, hit that little $sign like ATL did. Type it in the comments there and send it on. And I'll make sure that your comments get read out first and foremost. But like I said, I think that the 8-game schedule for the SEC is fair because the SEC is the toughest conference in America, in my opinion. All the other conferences have built-in cupcakes. We play a cupcake or two because we don't have built-in cupcakes in our conference. Everybody try to point to Vanderbilt. While Vanderbilt does suck most years, it's because they're in the SEC. If Vanderbilt and Mississippi State were in any other conference, they'd probably be at least in the middle of the pack every year. Mississippi State, I venture to say, would be top 3. You put Mississippi State in the ACC, see what happens in football. Not basketball, none of them other stupid-ass sports that they try to claim. The other day, this USC guy and this Stanford guy were telling me, yeah, but we got more national championships than y'all overall in all sports and everything. They may not want to admit it, and a lot of those crying hearts out there, feminists and whatnot, but the 2 sports that matter the most are college football and college basketball when it comes to college sports. If you're not succeeding in one of those sports and winning national championships in one of those 2 sports, then I don't really give you the respect that I would in Alabama or in Oklahoma or in basketball or North Carolina or Kansas or somebody like that, because y'all win national championships in sports that nobody even watches. Nobody comes out and watches a swim team. What do you have, about 20 or 30 people in the stands? Nobody comes out and watches synchronized swimming or equestrian out at Stanford Palo Alto Transgender Forum. Nobody watches that shit, man. Yeah, they can get mad. Y'all can get mad all you want, but nobody watches them sports, man. And counting all them sports. At least with softball and women's gymnastics, as far as women's sports go, at least they're spectator sports that sell out the place. Like, for example, Oklahoma softball sells out the place. I'm not sure of the capacity, but I'm sure it's over 10,000 or close to 10,000. What is it, 7,000, 8,000 people? If you don't get more than 300 people at your event, it's not really considered a viable sport to me that should count as far as, hey, look at us kind of deal. And in women's gymnastics, I don't know about out there. I know y'all got a men's gymnastics team, which we don't have, but the women's gymnastics down here has a 15,000 seat stadium that they play in, Coleman Coliseum, and they sell that joint out all the time. So if you're selling it out, it don't matter what gender you are, whether you're female or male. If your sport is selling tickets, if you're getting more than 200 or 300 people in there, then yeah, it might be a spectator sport. I see y'all have made a lot of comments. I haven't been able to catch them. Like I said, if you want me to catch a comment and actually speak upon it, hit the little $sign down there and make a donation, $2, $5, whatever. It goes up to 10, 20, I think, but I don't expect you to do all that. But just hit that and it'll highlight it. That way I can read your comment out more readily. I see Rob has popped in here. He has his badge on. Another member of the Outlaw Posse with the badge on, riding on up in here. Rob's in the house. Why does everyone think Alabama is dropping off so badly? Didn't Saban just have one of his best classes ever? Well, that's what I was saying earlier, Rob. He just signed a 4 or 5 star running back, the number 1 running back in the class, running back Anthony Rogers for the 2025 class. So until Saban starts dropping off from recruiting like Bear Bryant did back in the day, then you can't really say it's time for him to retire. You see, with Bear Bryant, he was 69 years old, but he didn't look 69. He looked like he's about 95 years old because, he had a lot of issues with alcoholism and that kind of deal. He didn't really take care of himself like Nick Saban does. Today's coaches, they're still pretty much, they still pretty much got their faculties about them on into their late 70s, maybe even early 80s sometimes. And I know that Joe Paterno and Bobby Bowden both coached into their 80s, but they were getting a little senile. Saban don't seem like he's getting senile just yet. So I don't think Alabama's dropping off either, Rob. I think that people may be in for a rude awakening. They want Alabama to drop off, just like any other blue blood out there. All the other people are rooting against them, and you need that in sports. You need a blue blood to root against. You need a powerhouse dynasty to root against. It's good, I think, for sports from time to time. They have a periodic dynasty. A little variety every once in a while don't hurt. College football had Alabama win at one time 6 out of 12. Clemson won 2 out of 3. Florida won 2 out of 3. Back in the 90s, I think Nebraska won 3 out of 4. So it's good to have a little dynasty off and on. You don't want to overdo it. Like the UCLA dynasty, if you know your college basketball history, they had one like something like 10 out of 12, one like 6 or 7 in a row or some shit. That's taking it a little too far. Right? That sort of makes people start tuning out. Like North Dakota State in Division II football, or Division I AA or FCS, or whatever they call it, CIA division. J.D. Wilmot retracted the message. Perfect cracker. Stanford just won 1-0 versus OU. Oh my goodness. An upset. But it's double elimination, right? So they lost 1 game to Stanford. So maybe they can rectify themselves. Sometimes it's good to get a loss out of the way. See, that's one thing I have a problem with college basketball is that you lose one game and you're out. I think college basketball should adopt whatever college baseball and softball do. I think it should be a double elimination, man. That way you don't have that one bad game and you're done. Because even in the NBA, you have to be beaten 4 times in a 7-game series. Oklahoma women's gymnastics also sells out the arena. They compete in Loyal Noble Center. They've won 3 national championships. Yeah. Alabama's won 6 national championships in gymnastics. I was a big proponent, just to show you that I'm not a misogynist or whatever they try to call me from time to time. I was of the belief that our gymnastics coach, Sarah, I think Sarah should have got a statue out there with the rest of the college football coaches. Now, it's right there in front of the football stadium, so I can understand why they wouldn't put the statue there. But they could have got her a statue and put it out there in front of Coleman Coliseum, as well as Wimp Sanderson, who was a great coach here at Alabama's basketball. And J.D. Wilmoth is retracting his messages. Smash the like button, everyone. Yes, thank you, Brian. Thank you for telling that. That's another thing. All you got to do is jump out of live chat, click off live chat for just a second, hit that like button, and then you jump right back in here. Because when you do that, if you can't donate with the $sign down there, by liking it, you push the algorithm, and when you push the algorithm, they put more ads and stuff, and they push me a lot more, and I get money that way as well. So, oh, no, OU plays Stanford. Oh, so they didn't lose to Stanford. Is that what you're telling me? Because I am not keeping up with it today. I'm in here talking to you guys. David Wood, OU football might get through the regular season with only 1 loss. Could be right. I mean, it would not surprise me if Oklahoma did come back and do that. A lot of people want to try to compare Oklahoma this year to TCU from last year. TCU, as you know, had a horrible season. They went 5-7 2 years ago, then they turned around and made the playoffs. A question was asked earlier about Michigan. You know, if Michigan hadn't lost to TCU and then TCU got beat 65-7, I would have thought, you know, Michigan is on an upswing a little bit because they haven't made the playoffs the last 2 years. I just don't know if Jim Harbaugh is going to be able to keep it up, because I think Jim Harbaugh has a eye looking over towards the NFL. I really think that if one coach could leave next year that nobody's expecting to leave, it could be Jim Harbaugh, because he's been trying to get an NFL job and get out of Michigan for the last couple of years. He won't admit to that, but he has been. Oklahoma's won 47 in a row. Actually, I heard that Oklahoma is now up to 50 games in a row, Swartek, or Swart, etc. Is that how you say your name? Georgia has an easy schedule. John Sexton says OU will win 8 games and will win their bowl game, which would put them at 9 games, right, John? No, man. I have a good feeling about Oklahoma this year. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but it would not surprise me if Oklahoma were to get in one of those BCS bowl game type deals. You know, maybe they would go to the Sugar Bowl or the Cotton Bowl. Maybe they get to play Tulane and show USC how to beat Tulane. Now, they barely squeaked by Tulane a couple of years ago, but that's when they had Linky Boy, who, for some reason, the Green Wave is like, it's like their kryptonite. So, sorry about that. I had a phone call try to pop up in here. So, but see what I meant, 47 in a row for Bud Wilkinson. Oh, yeah, you're right. That is an interesting point there. Oklahoma Sooners now own 2 of the longest, well, holy shit. Oklahoma Sooners own the 2 longest streaks in 2 sports now. Women's softball and, well, softball, because there's no men's softball. But softball and football. Oklahoma Sooners now own the 2 longest streaks in the nation. It's another feather in the cap for the Sooner Nation. Like I said, man, there's something about the crimson red, man. Everybody needs to get with it because that's where it's at. That regular red, not a big fan of, man. Looks like a off-colored Family Dollar shirt or something in Georgia Bulldogs wearing. They almost as orange as Florida in some aspects. They won't like that shit. Let's see what we got here. In what sport did Oklahoma just lose to Stanford? It wasn't softball because they beat Stanford softball in the other. Oh, okay. Football. Maybe Texas, maybe TCU. A-team, that's right. My ringtone is the A-team. Jimmy, JWK. I didn't know y'all heard that. But yeah, that was Heath Stokes trying to pop up in here. He's actually the one that suggested that I do this live stream and talk about Patti Gasso's dynasty versus Nick Saban's dynasty. Which one's better? Who is actually the better coach overall as far as sports goes? And I know they're two different sports. I don't need to say that ad nauseum. I don't need to say it ad nauseum because it's obvious. But if you had to choose Patti Gasso or Nick Saban, and try to put your crimson-colored glasses aside on both sides, Alabama and Oklahoma fans, who's the better one? And I'm putting mine aside, but I still think Nick Saban's got about that much. Just because he's got more national championships and because, to me, football would be a harder sport to consistently dominate the way Nick Saban has, especially with the scholarship limitations now and that kind of deal that's been going around. Now you got the NIL crap. While I'm aware softball does have NIL, it's not quite as harrowing and stressful as college football's NILs and transfer portals and all that bullshit. Stanford beat Washington 1-0, so they play OU tomorrow. I don't think David Horwig up in here, or Orwig. I don't think Harbaugh will leave until his ace up his sleeve is gone. Have you seen the video of this stud? He's a freshman. He might put Williams to shame. I can't remember that dude's name, but I saw the video on him. I saw a short video on the quarterback that you're talking about. And he looks really, 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 really good, man. He's got some talent. He's not just a runner, but a passer as well. Sort of got that Michael Vick look about him. I think he might actually be a little bit bigger than Michael Vick, though. OU doesn't play. Stanford won against Washington. Right. I just don't understand why Nick Saban couldn't make it in pro football. Here we go. Is that all y'all got? Is Patti Gasso made it in pro softball? See, that's another thing Nick Saban has to deal with that softball don't. He has to deal with an actual pro league that could come in and steal your players. Yeah, I know they've come up with this little pro softball league, but it's nowhere near as big as the NFL, let's be honest. As far as Nick making it in the NFL, that's a bit of a misleading thing that people think. Actually, as you know, Nick Saban went 9-7 one year with the Miami Dolphins, and I think he went 7-9 his second year. So Nick Saban wasn't like a horrendous coach. He was just a 500 coach. Wasn't as bad as Bobby Petrino and Steve Spurrier. And the only reason he left Miami, so let's be honest here. Y'all want to start this smack talk, let's do it right. Let's be honest now. Don't get mad at me. Nick Saban wanted Drew Brees when Drew Brees was on the market. Okay? I think Drew Brees was leaving San Diego or something. And Wayne Huizenga, or whatever his name is, who's the owner of the Miami Dolphins, had promised Nick Saban that he would have control of most moves regarding the roster. Well, he lied to Nick, and he got his little medical staff not to pass Drew Brees, which is a bunch of bullshit because Drew Brees went to the New Orleans Saints and passed immediately. That was just Huizenga trying to put Saban in his place or whatnot, and not to own up to the deal he made Nick Saban. And see, Nick Saban ended up getting stuck with Dante Culpepper's sorry ass, and we know the rest of the story. So, was Nick Saban successful at all these other college stops, though? Has Nick Saban ever had a losing record? No. Bear Bryant, has had a losing record before. I think Joe Paterno had a losing record. Bobby Bowden's had a losing record. Eddie Robinson's had a losing record. So as far as what he's doing now as a coach overall, I don't think it's really relevant as far as the pro football thing goes. They both deserve the title king and queen of their sport. South Carolina, true freshman. I ain't gonna be able to read all these comments as quickly. If y'all can just hit that $, throw a few dollars in the coffers on it, highlight your comment, and make me a lot easier for me to read these comments for you. Just drop about, I think you can do $2, $5, and $10 donations and that kind of deal. It's according to how long you want your comment or your question to be. Yeah, he was pretty pissed off about the Drew Brees thing, John. What's that guy's name down there in Miami? He was pissed off about it because Nick Saban left Miami. So was Don Shula. Don Shula said a lot of stupid shit too. The double-edged sword about it, what was really funny about the Miami Dolphins in Alabama was this. Alabama not only stole their coach, but they fired their legend son. They fired Mike Shula to replace him with Don Shula's organization, their head coach. So it was like a double whammy for Don Shula. Not only does the organization that he was a legend at lose their coach to Alabama, but they turn around and fire Don's baby boy. So, yeah, it's a lot of angst there. Mike Gundy's had a losing year. That's true. Mr. I'm a man, what is it now, 54, 55? He's got to tell us he's a man. Gundy may have been onto something though, because nowadays you have to really reiterate what gender you are. Even if you got a jack in the box, you might be a vagina. Might just be a vagina disguised as an outgrowing. That penis is an outgrowing vagina. That's what it is. So y'all gonna have to cut the transgender some breaks, I guess, because they're just so mistreated, man. Look, as far as the transgenders go, if y'all want to be like that, if y'all want to pretend like y'all women and stuff and have drop dead Fred Hour in your pants, that's fine. But do it on your own accord. Don't be coming in trying to jack women's sports and take it away from them when you're a biologically fair male and you're born that way. Compete in the sports that you're biologically fairly born to, because it just makes you look like a coward, man. If y'all want your own sport and you're not good enough to compete in your biologically fair gender, then form a transgender league. And let's see how well it does. Have a transgender volleyball league, have a transgender softball league, have some transgender gymnastics. Ugh. Oh, shit. Y'all do that shit. And y'all see how well it goes over. I'm just tired of woke bullshit, man. I just don't understand how they can do it. There's some kind of organization. One of y'all might know, it's like EAS or something, SCORE, that these big three conglomerates that own all the stock in the world give these other companies. It's the EAS score. And if you don't do well on that score, well, then they make it hard on your business. And those EAS scores are predicated on you pushing pride and pushing all these obscure, perverted persuasions. And if you don't, they make it hard on your business. That kind of deal. I don't have the stuff in front of me, but that's why they've been doing this stuff. That's why they've been risking losing business. Bud Light, Target, all them risk losing all that business, because if they don't, they're being threatened on the other side by these big three conglomerates. I forgot the names of the companies. Maybe you guys and gals know. The ESG. That's right. ESG, David. Can't remember what it stands for, but the ESG is what's making these companies do that. What these companies are going to have to realize is the ESG is not going to pay their bills. The ESG is going to screw them. The ESG probably didn't know they was going to screw them like that. They probably thought, well, we'll just force the issue. People will get over it, just like they rolled over for all this other bull crap. All these I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to get myself in trouble. Yeah, Culpepper was garbage. DEI, Chick-fil-A is going through it now. Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. They're going to have to stand up to these ESGs or whatever these people are and say, hey, look, y'all can go ahead and punish us if you want. Y'all can make it hard for us to do business. But if we do this, business is going to be hard anyway. So what these companies need to realize is which way is going to be better for us financially in the big picture of things. In the big picture of things, it would probably been wise for Bud Light to not pull that shit. It would have been wise for Target not to push children's clothing with tucks in them for little boys to tuck their penis between their legs. In the long term of things, millions of dollars, billions of dollars long term, it would have been better for you just to stand up to the ESG and give them the big middle finger. Texas know your rivalry will end. The battle of the Crimson. Hell yeah. You said the Texas know your rivalry will end? I don't think so. The Texas and Oklahoma are going to be permanents on the SEC schedule. OU and Alabama will be the battle of the Giants. Possibly. It'll be the battle of the Crimson Nations for sure. OU is going to turn into a farm team for OSU. I assume you're talking about Okie Pokey State, right? Old Okie Pokey State, boy. You know, I never realized how traumatized and emasculated they were when it come to Oklahoma. But I got delving into it, man, looking at the overall series record and that kind of deal. And man, I think Oklahoma's got them reversed. I think it's 91-19 or some shit. And for the longest time when I talked about Oklahoma coming to the SEC, because I had these discussions way before it happened, about 4 or 5 years ago with Oklahoma fans, a lot of them that were taking up for Oklahoma State, which I never understood, were saying that according to the legislature in Oklahoma, that Oklahoma couldn't go to another conference without taking Oklahoma State with them, which I thought was horseshit. I'm like, why would you have to carry somebody? They should have to make their own way. Now, I don't see Oklahoma and Oklahoma State carrying Tulsa into the Big 12. So I never understood that, man. I'm glad that Oklahoma finally stood up to that shit and said, hey, look, we hate to do it. We know y'all like playing us. It makes you feel good about yourself, but 91-19 is not good enough for us to fight for. And they didn't. But Oklahoma, Texas, their rivalry, very much better to fight for. As a matter of fact, if I was Oklahoma, the next closest team to me that I would rather see in the SEC besides Texas would be Nebraska, even though Nebraska's in the Big Ten. Even though Nebraska's in the Big Ten, I think that it would be a lot better because that rivalry was a great one back in the day. Nebraska and Oklahoma, one of the greatest rivalries of all time. I hate to see that go by the wayside, but it did. But anyway, if you guys and gals don't mind, if you ain't done it already, click out of the live chat, hit the like button. Also, if you want to, you can throw a few dollars in the coffer with a little dollar sign down there, or at the end of the show, if you want to, there's also a heart option. It's got the dollar sign as well. Heart thanks button, hit that, throw a few dollars in the coffers. And as always, KMCA to all the other teams. Class is now officially dismissed.